Madam Speaker, I am pleased to rise today to communicate to honorable members a vision and a framework to guide digital asset policy in the Bahamas, as laid out in a white paper my government is publishing today, and which I should lay on the table today as well. The digital assets made possible by blockchain technology represent an extraordinary innovation and are rapidly transforming the world's financial infrastructure. The cryptocurrency market is now worth more than $3 trillion. Digital assets are a remarkable opportunity for our country, an opportunity to leverage and build on our world-class financial services expertise, diversify our economy, engage a whole new generation of Bahamians, and lead the way in innovation. Digital assets are going to have a transformative impact across the globe, and we believe that the Bahamas and Bahamians can be at the vanguard of this new frontier. Yes. Madam Speaker, our country's economic recovery is already underway, but we cannot sit still. We cannot delude ourselves into thinking that the old economic models are a sufficient basis for dynamic, inclusive growth and prosperity. In the Blueprint for Change, we put forward and we put before the Bahamian people, we highlighted the importance of a well-regulated environment for cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. My government's initial success in attracting significant digital asset businesses is only the beginning. We have a vision to transform the Bahamas into the leading digital asset hub in the Caribbean and a global leader in the progressive regulation of businesses in this profoundly innovative space. This white paper is a comprehensive policy update and is the product of a consultative process that extensively engaged the Central Bank of the Bahamas, the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, the Bahamas Financial Services Board, and industry, legal, and financial experts. The white paper lists the following policy objectives. 1. To explore new opportunities in a rapidly and continuously evolving digital asset landscape, including developments in decentralized finance, better known as DeFi, and non-fungible tokens, NFTs, stable coins, and asset reference tokens. 2. To improve the attractiveness of the Bahamas as a well-regulated jurisdiction where well-run digital asset businesses of any size can operate, grow, and prosper. 3. Where necessary, to clarify and expand the scope of the current legislative framework generally and the DARE Act in particular, to continue to safely regulate digital assets and digital asset businesses. 4. To encourage innovation in the fintech space and identify emerging technologies that would help maintain the Bahamas' competitive advantage. To explore linkages between the Bahamas' existing financial services sector toolkit, that is corporate and fiduciary services, and to facilitate continued innovation in the international financial services sector. To develop the skills and expertise necessary to fill jobs created in the Bahamian digital asset sector. To work with the Central Bank of the Bahamas to ensure that policies are adjusted to clarify to enable Bahamians to access digital assets in Bahamian dollars, to build capacity and expand the resources of the Securities Commission in order to support and enhance its role as the preeminent digital asset regulator, and to enable it to become a global center of excellence in the pragmatic, risk-adjusted regulation of digital assets and digital asset businesses. And finally, to provide sustainable funding for our digital asset policies, initiatives, and programs. Madam Speaker, taken together, fulfillment of these objectives will encourage the growth of an exciting new industry while protecting consumers, businesses, and investors. It will also offer safeguards against systemic risk which may emerge. They will also help to promote and defend the competitiveness of the Bahamas and offer new opportunities for Bahamians and international investors alike. We wish for our country and our people to be seen as innovators, to stand among the first and best as a great place to do business. The policy white paper, Madam Speaker, highlights the positive potential economic impact of an expanded digital asset sector. It also highlights the role that potential growth in the sector can play in helping to rebuild the Bahamian economy. Post-Dorian and post-COVID, there's much damage to be repaired. This potential economic benefit is, in fact, a central motivation for the development of this digital asset policy. Madam Speaker, while we recognize the extraordinary opportunities afforded by digital assets, we also recognize the risks. And thus, we emphasize the importance of effective regulation. We will attract the best companies and keep out the bad actors. Digital assets companies associated with our jurisdiction must operate fairly and in the interest of its customers. We must ensure that customers' money and assets are properly safeguarded and that measures are in place to detect and prevent financial crime. In doing so, at the same time, the Bahamas will be meeting its international obligations, upholding our reputation, and mitigating the inevitable risks associated with the introduction of new technologies. Madam Speaker, our white paper also envisions the establishment of a digital advisory panel to keep digital assets development, emerging trends, and associated risks constantly under review. The panel will be charged with keeping the government, the Digital Asset Policy Committee, and appropriate regulators fully updated with relevant information. They will be expected to recommend any necessary changes to policy, the DARE Act, and other legislation to ensure that the Bahamas maintains its place as a well-regulated digital asset jurisdiction, while at the same time continuing to remain relevant and attractive for digital asset businesses to operate from, to grow, and to prosper. Madam Speaker, the remaining parts of the white paper speak more broadly to the wider context of digital assets in the Bahamas. Of enormous importance to me are the policy proposals in Part 6. We propose to expand the range of sector-specific academic, professional, and vocational opportunities in education. This is vital to ensure that Bahamians are well-placed and best placed to secure positions in this exciting new industry. Yes. We will promote closest collaboration between the University of the Bahamas, the private sector, and the regulators to develop crypto assets courses to both certificate and degree level. I trust the whole House and the Bahamian people will share my fervent desire that the widest possible number of Bahamians benefit from this opportunity. In Part 7 of the White Paper, we set out how we wish Bahamians to be able to access digital assets in B dollars and encourage greater use of the sand dollars. Part 8 seeks to integrate our digital asset policy with our wider policy around climate change. We propose to introduce incentives for digital assets that prioritize more energy-efficient digital use to help mitigate the effects of greenhouse gases. We'll also explore the feasibility of establishing a system of carbon credits and the establishment of a Caribbean carbon market. This would potentially employ distributed ledgers for all blockchain technology and operate within the Bahamas digital asset regime. Madam Speaker, a commitment is made at Part 9 to provide the necessary resources for the Securities Commission to continue building capacity and to meet the growing demand to regulate and supervise an increasing number of global digital asset businesses. At Part 10, we undertake to consider, in consultation with relevant stakeholders, the introduction of a training and development levy in order to provide a sustainable source of revenue for the initiatives within the policy. And finally, Madam Speaker, as has been hinted at throughout, in Part 11, the paper makes a specific commitment to adopt an approach which is proportionate, risk-adjusted, and balanced. This approach should take a joined-up, multi-stakeholder approach, one that considers all policy objectives and outcomes. In this way, it is anticipated that our approach to digital assets will be fully integrated into the wider policy objectives of the government. Madam Speaker, what we propose is truly innovative. We are determined to set the Bahamas on a path fully fit for the 21st century and beyond that truly delivers on that brighter future for all. Madam Speaker, I would, Madam Speaker, with your leave, lay the policy document along with my communication. Sorry.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up.
Madam Speaker.
Order that the documents do lie on the table. Thank you.
Further communication.
Further communication.
Speaker, this relates to the climate change and carbon markets initiatives bill to be laid. Madam Speaker, upon coming to office in September 2021, almost exactly 7 months ago, my administration immediately began to highlight issues connected to climate change and the Bahamas. 6 days into office, I addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations. While many leaders were focused on the global pandemic, I wanted the world to remember that when COVID arrived on our shores, my country was still reeling from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Dorian. Most importantly, I wanted to remind world leaders that the intensity of Dorian was almost certainly the result of climate change. The warming waters and above average temperatures caused by human emissions means that storms like Dorian linger longer and cause more damage. 2 months later, at the World Leaders Summit during COP26 in Glasgow, I made this point to my fellow leaders. Small and developing states like ours, which are hit hardest by the impact of climate change, are the least responsible. But I didn't just want to focus on the problem. I also wanted to drive home the importance of the need for the world to act. Madam Speaker, our administration has not been content to sit on the global sidelines, leaving our fate in the hands of others. My government will continue to make the case for urgent action. And in this, I am pleased to say that there are signs that the world is noticing. The Bahamian people are more engaged around the issues of climate change than ever before. And the voice of the Bahamas is now being heard more frequently and with more impact than ever before. As the world moves forward to address the causes of climate change, we intend to play an active and powerful role in charting the way forward. Madam Speaker, this climate change carbon initiatives bill that I intend to lay seeks to participate in the global response to the threat of climate change in ways which will also be of compensatory, practical, and environmental benefit to the Bahamas. Before I go further, I wish to share some basic facts regarding the science surrounding climate change. Successive reports by the United Nations and a host of international organizations point to the role of carbon emissions in causing temperatures to rise on our planet. If I might quote from one of the UN's climate action fact sheets, and I quote, in a 2018 report, thousands of scientists and government reviewers agreed that limiting global temperatures rise to no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade would help us avoid the worst climate impacts and maintain a livable climate. Yet the current path of carbon dioxide emissions could increase global temperatures by as much as 4.4 degrees centigrade by the end of the century, close quotes. Since that 2018 report, climate risk has intensified and the situation has grown more urgent. It is for this reason that a growing coalition of countries is committing to reducing their carbon emissions to zero by 2050. Madam Speaker, even though the carbon emissions that cause climate change are produced from all parts of the world, some countries produce far more than others. Example, the 100 lowest carbon emitting countries in the world, which include the Bahamas, together produce only 3% of global emissions. At the other end of the scale, the 10 highest carbon emitting countries produce 68% of emissions. What happens in those high emission countries doesn't stay in those high emission countries. Those emissions lead to the climate change which poses existential risk to countries such as ours. Three critical framework agreements now guide the global response as to how the world should respond to this existential threat. And the Bahamas participates in them all. They are the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Paris Agreement, and the agreement reached after the recent negotiations at the 26th Conference of the Parties in Glasgow. One of the key outcomes in the discussions in Glasgow was agreement that significant financial support is needed for our country and others to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. And central to that agreement was the recognition that an important tool to support these efforts is engagement in carbon markets. Madam Speaker, carbon markets set a price for a unit of carbon dioxide, which can then be traded between a buyer and seller. At COP26, after 6 years of negotiations, countries finally agreed on rules for international cooperation through carbon markets. The new rules, as outlined in Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, state that countries around the world could trade units, that is carbon credits, with one another in order to access more cost-effective emissions reductions, or in the case of the Bahamas, to sell excess emissions credits. The Bahamas has significant resources that, with conservation and restoration, can remove carbon from the Earth's atmosphere. The sale of carbon credits can aid the country in further protecting our seagrasses, mangroves, forests, and coral reefs. This means that high carbon emitting countries could buy credits from us, both compensating us for the role our country can play as a carbon sink and reducing the overall total amount of carbon being emitted into the atmosphere. Carbon markets are an important bridge to a net zero future. In our Blueprint for Change, the platform we put before the people and on which we were elected, we pledged to secure carbon credit payments for our country. This bill marks the first step in doing just that. Another step in delivering a new day for the Bahamian people. Madam Speaker, at present, the goal is for all countries to reach net zero by 2050. This provides the Bahamas with essentially 28 years to optimally benefit from the carbon market initiatives. While guidance on the implementation of the framework agreements will take time to be fully developed, a vibrant, voluntary carbon credit marketplace already exists. This voluntary carbon market allows eco-conscious companies to offset their emissions beyond what is required by any government. 1 in 5 of the world's 2,000 largest publicly traded companies have now committed themselves to a net zero emissions target. As many businesses and multinational companies have been directed by their shareholders to engage in stronger environmental, social, and governance practices, commonly called just ESG, the provisions of Bahamian carbon credits would prove of mutual benefit for our country and these private sector entities. And that is on what they call the voluntary carbon market. The first step is to map out scientifically the mangroves, the seagrasses, and forests that we have that are functioning or could function as a carbon sink. That is, functioning to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. While this mapping and verification process is taking place, we need to set up the legal and financial frameworks that can ensure that any resulting carbon credits are managed in the best interest of the Bahamian people. That is the goal of the legislation we lay before the House today. Madam Speaker, we will be laying the bill at the appropriate time on the agenda.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the document be brought up.
Moving.